And, you know, before we begin, some of you kind of know Pat and me, but not everyone does. And so what Pat and I thought we would do is we would each tell the group a little bit more about ourselves. And so Pat, I'm going to have you go first. And what are 3 things you would like to reveal?
Okay, so if you know me, you know that I worked in HR at Campbell Soup for about 8 years. And I had a pretty successful run there. And I have to say that I credit that to my ability to network effectively internally, which I was doing sort of intuitively at that point. And only in later years did I discover what it was I was doing that was effective. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when I'm not helping people build their silo-busting networking skills, I am helping women leaders, women managers, learn the skills that make executive women successful. So women's leadership development. And then finally, I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I have a marvelous view of the historic Delaware Canal. And I live here with my wonderful husband and our 2 feline friends, Juno and Jasper.
Right. Hey, thanks, Pat. So let me give you a little bit of for me. My work focus is basically looking at how to ratchet up the performance of people within organizations and do this in a variety of ways through leadership development, coaching, performance management, advisor roles, etc. I seem to have an expertise. It was one that I didn't plan on honing, but it seems like I do have a skill in coaching professional women. So there's a connection with Pat in the terms of women's leadership. But I seem to have an expertise in coaching women, professional women, to help them find their voice and their leadership presence. And what I find interesting is that when you really start looking at leadership presence, the idea of influence, developing relationships, and networking are really key with that. So there's kind of a connection to what we're going to be talking about today with silo-busting networking. And one last fun fact about me is I'm known for making some signature ice creams and sorbets, although my husband would bemoan that I haven't done it in a while. And so I really need to pull out that ice cream maker and start making some of these ice creams and sorbets that I used to make all the time. And I also have a really large cookbook collection. I use it, it's on an outside, it's all in a bookcase on an outside wall. I consider it to be insulation. So that's a little bit about Pat and then a little bit about me. And now several things before we get into the real meat of silo busting networking, as this, it says so big on this wonderful screen here. Keep the screen, Pat. But most companies, just so that you know, as you all have figured out, most companies have silos. And they happen naturally, and they happen because of size, different locations, different products, different services, even different functions and of the way different functionalities within a company operate. So silos just happen naturally. Many silo issues occur across or horizontally across a company, but they truly can happen vertically as well. Silos negatively affect and impact companies, and we'll briefly go into some of the problems in a minute. But Pat and I want you both, and not both, but all of you to know, is the focus of this webinar is not presenting the case that companies need to break down their silos. There's a lot of research on it. We've done it. And that research is what helped us build the program and our set of skills for what we're presenting today. The focus here is on how individuals can develop the skills to reach across silos and push through boundaries. Some of you that are participating today are in companies. Others of you may be consultants or you're looking for your next great opportunity. And I'm going to tell you, even though the focus here is much on internal networking within an organization, this really doesn't matter, because learning our silo-busting networking skills can really help you internally as well as externally. So with that, I'm now ready to begin. So Go to that next slide, Pat. Thanks. You know, so forces for change and innovation, they buffet the business world and from all areas of the market. So organizations really have to be agile. Now that means that they must be adaptable. They must be able to adjust on the fly to meet competitive pressures, any of those disruptive technologies, and shifting demands in the marketplace driven by those customers and clients. So in a way, think about now. Think how you and your company and your clients have had to really change. To use that word now that has said so much, pivot. To learn how to pivot through this pandemic. Think how your job and the way that you work, think how that has changed during this time. Agile organizations really are different. Traditional organizations are built around a static, siloed, structural hierarchy, mostly up and down, that makes it difficult and sometimes really almost impossible to respond to any change with some agility and with speed. Agile organizations, however, tend to be more nimble. They are characterized by networks of employees who operate in rapid learning and decision-making cycles. And they do it not only within a particular vertical, but they can do it across, right? They're breaking down those barriers. When the environment shifts, these organizations, because they're agile, can evolve along with it. When competitors emerge, they bring greater innovations to their clients and their customers in newer and actually better ways. I love this analogy, and it's one that I've stolen from Pat. They operate like ships that really can maneuver around troubling storms, rather than trains that plow straight ahead on a predetermined track that no one, even that darn engineer, can actually change. It's in this context that Pat and I facilitate learning strategic networking skills that can increase any company's ability to respond rapidly to a continually changing world. And we have a name for it. And lo and behold, what is it? These set of skills are silo-busting networking. So today, we're going to introduce these skills to you. So you're going to hear what they are, and we're also going to give you a chance to actually practice some of those. And before we get into that, I want to get into our mission. And Pat, you can go through the whole thing. Cool, thank you. So our mission, and of course, like any mission statement, Pat and I worked on this, is to ignite. What we want to happen with strategic or silo-busting networking is we want to ignite employees' ability to create these strategic internal networks that break down barriers, obstacles that get in the way of growth, productivity, communication, and collaboration. That is what the whole focus of our, I sometimes use the initials SBN, strategic silo-busting networking. That is our whole purpose. So we're going to get into some activity on your end, and we're going to start with the next, we're going to do a poll. So what we like you, Pat and I like you to do is to take a quick poll to find out what problems are silos in your companies or those of your client companies creating, either for you or for others. So here's the poll. Pick as many that apply. What are the problems you have either experienced yourself or you know your clients have experienced? Go forth and put in as many that apply.
Barbara, it's only allowing me to select one.
Ah. Zoe, can we work on that?
It's locked in now because we started the poll. So I'm sorry about that, everyone.
That's okay.
So pick one. That's okay. We'll
Pick the top one.
Pick one. We'll see. Well, this will be interesting. We're going to see which ones come out the most. Thank you, Susie. Okay, give another couple seconds. We still have 50%. Okay, we're getting up to 66%. Keep them coming. Few more. All right, I think we can close the poll. All right, and we're going to share the results here. So let's take a look at what we see. So the two, I sometimes find my efforts are being duplicated. That's always an issue. And I can't get cooperation from other people. Yeah, those are those are two big ones. And we see actually people have identified in every single area, which is not surprising. That's what we have tended to see when we have done this webinar in the past. So I think we can, any questions about the poll or any thoughts?
Barbara, I work for a matrix organization, but it's very large. And so it's a matrix within our divisions, which are like smaller companies under an umbrella, but it still feels and still has a lot of these issues. It still feels very siloed. So, I mean, is that an organizational commonality?
Oh, yes. I mean, to me, matrix is another layer on top of an organizational structure. So absolutely. One of the things that Pat and I have realized is that when we started coming up with this, it was before the pandemic. And what we now have realized is that with more people working remotely, and even when we get this miracle vaccine that we can now go back into the workplace, we're going to find more people that are going to be working remotely. When you work remotely, that's another silo.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And you know, I've worked remotely for almost 20 years.
Yeah, so it is another silo. So yes, a matrix process on top of an organizational one only adds to the complexity. I would think that these would be ramped up.
Some of our leaders are very proud of the matrix overlay because it puts it on the employee to influence, and you know, other employees that they don't report to. And you do, I mean, I suppose I can look at it as a positive because you do learn a lot of ways to appeal to different people and how to get people who don't have to help you at all help you.
Yeah, and Susie, what you're going to see is that one of the silo busting networking skills is influence, and it is all about getting people who don't report to you, have no link to you whatsoever, getting them to do what you need them to do. So I think it's good that the matrix managers are proud of that. If they've got people who can influence others to get things done, I think that's a real important skill.
Well, rate of success, I can't comment.
Right.
Well, you know, but what is hard is that when a situation is put on people, and if they don't have the skills, they haven't been taught the skills, learned the skills on how to influence in this case, or any of the others, it becomes a problem. And that's why, again, influence is one of the silo busting networking skills and why we think it's important. So I'm going to go into some other reasons of why these issues, and you can stop sharing this particular poll, and we can go on to the next slide. And let me get rid of it on my side here too. So I want to get into some of the problems, the impediments that you all identified in the poll are reasons why you as an employee or as a consultant, etc., should care about having an effective internal network, a silo busting network. Networking that leads to strong, trusting relationships with people in your department, your business unit, your matrix, etc., and across your organization. This is really an essential foundation for helping you get your job done more effectively. It makes connections that improve the communications, which thank God means you get your answers faster. It facilitates collaboration, which makes ideas flow, so you get help with your problems, project management, and getting your job done. Why you should care again? It increases your ability to influence, so here it is, others to do what you need them to do. Silo busting networking provides pathways for sharing knowledge, which again improves your ability to learn and grow. And I've said that word grow, so speaking of growth, it gives you greater visibility. So your name, if your name comes up for an interesting assignment or an interesting consulting project, and promotional opportunities wherever they may occur within your organization or even outside your organization. That's what silo busting networking does. And I'm going to give one last one. It's important that internal networking increases or can absolutely increase job satisfaction because work is more enjoyable, right? When you understand the challenges, not only within your own little area, but how you affect other areas and how it affects the whole organization and how the whole organization operates when you understand that and the needs of others. And right now I'm getting some feedback. Is that okay? I think we've got it.
Good.
And so the idea here is that you can help, you can understand where others are. They will be able to understand where you are. It will help in working together and help one another. So now I'm going to throw this over to Pat to actually get into what are these miraculous silo busting networking skills.
The beef.
Pat,
We're getting
take
to
it.
the beef. Thanks, Barbara. There are lots and lots of skills that are involved in networking, as we probably all know. But in the experiences that Barbara and I have had, both in the corporate world and in consulting, we've honed it down to the 6 networking skills that we think matter the most. And those are building trusted relationships, connection creation, cultural and political savvy, enterprise-wide thinking, influence, and open communication. Underlying all of these is the need to understand other people. People who are skilled networkers are concerned about the situations and the needs of other people. It's not all about them. So the purpose of networking isn't just to help themselves, it's to help those around them. And this is, if you've been around Beacon for any length of time, you know this is kind of the ethos that we're built upon. So we're going to take a look at each one of these in a bit more detail. But before we do that, I want to direct you to the Word document that you received prior to coming to the webinar. And I think Zoe's put that in the chat now. What you'll find there are instructions and materials for a skill building exercise that we're going to be doing a little bit later, and a list of these silo busting networking skills with a space for you to make notes. So what I'm going to suggest is that you go to that document now so that you can make some notes as we talk through the details of each of these skills. And you're going to be using those later on when you get into your skill building exercise. So those who are skilled at building trusted relationships are able to talk easily with people. They're able to build rapport easily. They find common ground on which to make connections with others. They work hard to earn the respect of others by demonstrating their competence, their confidence, and their integrity. And they take actions to create relationships with other people that enhance everyone's ability to work together and achieve desired business results. When someone's good at creating connections, it's because they take the time to identify the people with whom they need to connect or should connect. That's very strategic. They get to know people well in order to see mutually beneficial connections, and that allows them to help other people build these connections strategically across functional areas, and to your point, Susie, across matrixed areas. Someone who's culturally and political savvy knows how to fit in. They understand the culture and the operating environment. They know how to get things done in the organization. They know who to go to get answers. And they adapt to network effectively within the system. And they act and they speak in ways that fit in. An enterprise-wide thinker is someone who understands the big picture and how they fit into it. So it's not just thinking in their silo, it's thinking across the silos of the organization. They promote a high level of networking and cooperation among diverse groups of people in the organization. And they demonstrate business savvy that allows them to think both deeply and broadly about their organization. Oops, we got a little bit of a glitch there. I'm going to go to influence next. Influence, as we talked about earlier, is so important because it helps you gain cooperations from people who are outside your span of control. And let's face it, that's most of the population, right, that we interact with on a daily basis at work. So influential people develop and use effective strategies to gain the support of others for their ideas and actions. They offer compromises. It's not their way or the highway. They're willing to make trade-offs to others. And they go out of their way to meet key people who can support them and help them move their actions forward. So they influence directly and indirectly through other people. Now, open communication is also a critical networking skill. In fact, it really underlies all of the others. And an easy way to think about it is stop, listen, and learn. Stop talking, listen and ask questions, and learn how other people are doing and feeling. Those who do this well encourage people to talk directly with one another across department and division lines. They're approachable. They make other people feel comfortable discussing and resolving issues. And they network with, they talk with, and they listen very attentively to many different types of people in the organization. So what we're going to do now is spend some time on activities, a couple of activities, to help you figure out when and who to network with. In small breakout groups, you're going to practice two techniques. The first is power mapping, and then later strategic connections. So we're going to do power mapping first. So let me explain what a power map is, and then Barbara will talk about strategic connections. So power mapping helps you plan and create a network of relationships with groups and or with individuals that you need to help you be effective in your role and in getting your job done and achieving your goals. In power mapping, networks of relationships are absolutely critical, and stronger networks yield the best solutions. It's a way for you to figure out whom you need to influence and how best to do that. Can you go to them directly, or do you need to have other people helping you do that influence? The objective is to map a network in a particular context. So this could be one-off, it could be a project or a new initiative, or it could be ongoing, such as your work unit performance. If you're trying to improve the work unit performance, or simply there's something that you need to do better to get your job done more effectively. The map is used to identify those with whom you need strong working relationships to accomplish your objective. Now, you may already have relationships with some of those people, but there are probably many others with whom you have to build a relationship. So you'll have multiple power maps for different work objectives. Each power map should have just one objective. So let me stop there and see if anyone has questions about power maps. Okay.
Pat, you may have said this, so I apologize if I'm asking you to reiterate, but this power map exercise, you haven't told us if this is a one-off or an ongoing structure yet.
That's right.
Okay.
The exercise that you're doing is going to be a one-off, as you will see when we get into it.
Okay. Pardon me.
No, that's quite all right. No problem. It's always nice when people anticipate what's coming up. So in just a minute, we're going to assign you to breakout rooms. But first I want to just give you a little explanation of what we want you to do. But again, pull out that Word document that we sent out to you and that you used earlier, hopefully, to take some notes on the silo busting networking skills. Have a look at the power mapping case study. This case is fictitious, but we hope it's realistic. It's about a little manufacturing company. Simple, very simple, not a big organization with lots of matrices and departments and business units and that kind of thing. So what you're going to see, and you're seeing it on the screen also, is the background on the case study. Anne here is the central focus. She's a VP whose goal it is to quickly bring her company's new widgets to market. And a new widget, one new widget. So to your point, Susie, it is a very, very focused power map that she needs. On the other side, you see Anne's relationships, the relationships she has with the 9 other people in the organization who are crucial in her plan for accomplishing the goal. And I'll let you read those. I'm not going to take time to read those. But when you get into your breakout rooms, what we'd like you to do is work as a group to come up with a plan for how Anne will use the silo busting networking skills to get cooperation that she needs from others to achieve her goal. So start by reviewing her relationships and then go to the power map template on the last page of the Word document. And let's do that right now. This is what it looks like. And in the circles, you'll plot the name of a person and the skill that Anne is going to use to get their cooperation. And as you're doing this, have a little discussion about why you think that skill is most important. Now, you may think that all the skills are important in every case, and you'd probably be right. But for each of the people from whom Anne needs to get cooperation, choose just the 1 or 2 skills that are going to be most important for her. You can use the skills as often as you need to, the 6 skills, or you might not use one of them at all. It's entirely up to you and the group that you're working with. So, important to remember, there are no right or wrong answers here, but when you come back to the main room, we're going to ask each breakout group to report on only 2 of the people. And we won't tell you who those people are until you get back into the room. But we'll explain a little bit more about what we want you to say. But basically, we want you to choose one person in your group to take notes about your plan. And then we'll call on that person to do the brief, maybe 2-minute overview of the people, the skills, and why you thought those skills were the most important ones. So make sure that when you get into your breakout room that somebody, and usually that person, records the number of your breakout room, because when we come back, I'm going to call on you room by room. We're going to give you about 20 minutes to work on this. We'll set a timer running in the upper right-hand corner of your screen that'll let you know when you're running out of time. And when the timer runs out, you'll actually have another 30 seconds to do a quick wrap-up if you need it before you're pulled back into the main room. Okay, any questions?
Oh, pause the recording too.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? How what we thought traditionally needed to be taught in person is now, there's so much happening right now where people are talking about how easy it is to do this stuff and still be productive virtually.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Necessity's the mother of invention, right?
Talking about pivoting and being agile.
Yeah.
Little pirouettes.
All of these, what is the cliches? Like, the necessity is the mother of invention, never really thought about what it means until you just said it. And I'm like, oh, that's what that means. And there's a lot of those that are coming up.
Yeah.
Anyway, I apologize, Barb and Pat. I just have emergency call I got to take, so I'm going to hop off. If I can get back on, I will. I apologize.
Please do if you
No
can.
worries, Tricia.
Bye-bye.
Okie doke. So we ready to rock and roll here. All right, so I'm going to call on the reporter for room 1 first, and I'd like you to talk about Aisha and Diane. Who's the reporter for room 1?
Wendy, please.
Well, Charlie, but I need your chart. Okay, so Aisha, and I don't actually know if we got to Diane.
Well, that's okay.
But we'll talk about Aisha. We did talk about Aisha. So they do have a existing good relationship. Which is a great foundation. So the things that we talked about was really kind of, ensuring that the open communication continues, and, ensuring then, from kind of a more tactical perspective that what's being designed can actually be manufactured, and looking at it kind of from that holistic full workflow perspective that, you take the example that if you have the greatest gadget in the world, but if you can't produce it efficiently at a low cost, et cetera, you don't really have a viable product then, kind of aligning that workflow and looking kind of broadly and strategically at, I guess if you want to call that enterprise-wide thinking, that that full workflow to ensure that the two are aligned.
Yeah. That's a key with enterprise-wide thinking, is that alignment across the organization. Yeah.
Wendy mentioned the task force idea.
Oh, yeah. So, and this kind of came up specifically when we were talking about asthma, but it actually applies to all of the other kind of multidisciplinary people, using a task force type approach of pulling in people from each of the disciplines to engage them early in the process, part of the problem solving, and you really kind of end up using that whole spectrum of skills then, right? The opening communication, the building connections, the building trusting relationships, that if you engage someone early and include them in that entire process, you are much more likely to be successful, as opposed to kind of just throwing them in or reaching out to them at the very end.
Yeah, we preach that, if you need to get something done, get everybody involved early and often, because you're going to get buy-in that way. You're going to build buy-in. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Ownership. Yep.
Yeah, so the task force was kind of the model that we thought of, that, create this team that's cross-functional that helps you accomplish what she's looking to do, which is to get it to market sooner, right? So include all your stakeholders.
Yeah, great. Good work, guys. I love it.
Well, the other thing that came up on the two that you mentioned for us with Aisha and Diane is we saw them as through indirect influence, using that skill to get to asthma.
Ah, cool. Good thinking about how to use other people to get to. Excellent.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Okay, anything else from group 1? Okay.
Wendy's wonderful.
I know she is.
That's only because you volunteered me to be the scribe.
She is wonderful. We agree.
I just learned something, didn't I?
So Wendy gets a round of applause. Okay, so let's go to room 2. Who's the speaker for room 2?
That would be me.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So talk about Martin and asthma.
Okay. Well, I don't really want to talk about Martin.
You don't have to then. Talk about asthma.
Oh, I love talking about asthma. So we did talk about the relationship between advertising and sales. We primarily talked about asthma and Diane. Diane is the sales VP, and asthma is our prickly advertising gal. And what we talked about was Anne meeting first with asthma and using her building trusted relationship skill to try and restart a relationship with asthma, because they got off to a rocky start, and help asthma understand how important she is to the success of this project, and how she can help the group to be successful. And then meet with Diane and use her influencing skills to try and bring asthma in to improve that relationship between advertising and sales.
Okay, good. I like it. Yeah, leverage Diane. We don't know what Diane's relationship is with asthma, but it's, again, you're getting that alignment piece, which I think is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else from room 2 participants? Okay.
For those two, no, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Barbara. Okay, room 3. Who's the speaker for room 3? Is it?
You might have to come. Yeah,
I believe it's me by, I think.
By default?
By default.
It works, right?
Yeah, so that's fine. So
We all, just so you know, we all said not it right before we.
basically, I just have slow motor skills.
That's what you get for leaving the room early, Susie.
Yeah.
So talk about Lena and Greg, if you would, or if you've got other people you'd rather talk about. It's all very interesting.
Well, yeah, it is all very interesting. And so we spent time on each person and each department. And so we were really taking a holistic view of how each person relates and how each department relates. And then Wendy, pulled it together very nicely when she was talking about needing a cross-functional team and getting buy-in from all of parties. And I would say that's even more important because this is a small company. One of these breaks down and your widget's not out the door, and speed is a necessity. So I remember Lena, but did you say Greg? I sure don't remember a Greg.
He was there. Don't worry about Greg. Talk about Lena and pick another person.
Okay. So Lena is new to the company, and Anne hasn't met her yet. And so we had discussed, a meeting with Albert, Eric, and Lena, that might be sort of a good department heads, or at least representatives, not heads necessarily, but representatives from each that has to work together. We saw some political, cultural things because Lena is going to be learning that, and since she does have good relationships, or not Lena, I apologize. Yeah, Lena is going to be learning the culture of the company.
Yeah, how to fit in, right?
Yeah, so Diane, really needs to get her on the positive train, and we think that Albert, the COO, and Eric, the engineer, 2 departments we assume are working pretty closely together, would be a good meeting. But we really did, I think what we were hedging towards was like a company-wide meeting wouldn't be very big. It's not impossible to have a company-wide meeting with all of these people. And if then you're able to get their buy-in, you have enterprise-wide thinking just by default by having everyone being represented. We talked a lot about influence and how to influence asthma. And I think that's something we can. That was not a problem. That was not something we thought we could do now. We just sort of felt like that was more of a long-term thing. Mm-hmm. But we found in each relationship, each skill, building trusted relationships, connection creation, political savvy and cultural savvy, enterprise-wide thinking, and influence. And our group assumed there's going to be open communication. I mean, there just has to be in this kind of example.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's Lena. Just arbitrarily pick another one because I can't find Greg. So
there isn't a Greg.
Yeah, I think Greg was from another case.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. That's my fault.
Okay, well, that's all right. So who would you like me to address in addition, or is that?
I think that'll probably
gives you a feeling, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you know what it says to me is that you're validating the 6 skills really. And when you when you develop a skills model like this, you kind of go through this whole validation process. But this is kind of good for us to hear that, you know, these are the right skills. These are important skills.
Oh, no doubt about that. I think the whole team agreed with that. They are all critical.
Now,
Good.
something that I heard Tricia say when I stopped in some of the groups is that she said sometimes we do this intuitively. And you probably, many of you probably are doing a lot of these intuitively. But what we see happening is that within organizations, people they're not using them. They're particularly with power maps and strategic connections, which we'll get into a moment, is that they're looking at just accomplishing what is right in front of them, and they're not really thinking about the people involved and what do I really need to do on an individual basis to build. So while I totally agree with you, Susie, that having a company-wide meeting accomplishes almost a lot of the skill set, a meeting doesn't create the one-on-one connection that is so key for people to build and break through the boundary. Okay, so yes, you can do it as a group, but it's also thinking about how are you going to use any of these skills to work through a boundary and build a connection. Okay.
Okay, good. Last but not least, we don't have a room 4, so we have room 5. Who's the spokesperson for room 5?
By military draft.
So
Go
they all stepped back and you were left standing there. All right.
Basically, yes. We did not approach this on a one-on-one type of relationship stuff like you want us to talk about. So I'm going to tell you right up front, we ain't answering that question.
Go right ahead. But you only have 2 minutes.
We thought all of the skills were needed. A few of them are more important with a few of the players and therefore can be identified individually. For example, we're assuming Albert really doesn't want to be the guy giving all the orders. Therefore, it's more important for Anne to keep open communication with him so he knows what's going on and can help influence from the background, but not play an overt role. We assumed that was the intent. As usual, lots of missing information in the case. We also tended not to be very skill-oriented in our conversation, but actions and stuff. We wanted to have individual meetings with all the key players, Aisha, Diane, Lena, and Asma, if I'm saying that right. And you know, this is the objective, all that kind of stuff. And then clearly with Lena and Martin, because he probably comes in, even though he's second level, comes in pretty quickly since he presumptively is managing a big chunk of the volume of the organization,
Right.
As the key account guy. Connection creation is critical with those two because they're new to the organization, etc. But most of the time we were struggling with, and also with Asma, because apparently there's a broken relationship there. So when you say advertising manager is prickly, I know that role very well. It's the tail of the dog and always gets whipped around by everybody else. So they
No wonder they're prickly.
So bringing them in up front should resolve a lot of that. So our idea was, as much as group 1, we wanted to really start out right away making a project team out of everybody and running this on a joint basis with open communication to everybody about the whole thing. So that as R&D is design and manufacturing, design and manufacturing process, advertising is aware of what's being sold, why, for what reason, why they're going to buy it, etc., all up front, and that decreases a lot of the risks in the process. And the open communication itself resolves probably a lot of the problems, because people who don't know what's happening suddenly get slant, you know, as far as they're concerned, hit from out of the blind side with, I got to do this by when? Goes away. They're now part of setting the timelines, the information flows, and so on.
Yep. Good. Great job, everybody. And different answers, but I think there were definitely some themes running through there: the open communication, the you know, building that buy-in up front. So, good job. All right. Anything else on power mapping before I turn it over to Barbara to talk about strategic connections?
Can I ask a question? Why do you call it power map?
Huh. Well, I don't know. It's a term that I picked up somewhere along the way. And
I mentioned it.
Okay,
to
go
you.
ahead. It's mostly used in community settings, social settings, but go ahead, Barbara.
We use the word power map, and we picked it to just say that if you are looking at getting your specific jobs done, what is the community? What would be how would you map who you need to really use these SBN skills with? Who would those be? And we decided it gives you more power. It's a way to map who you really need to develop relationships with, use your networking skills to break through any barriers to get your normal work done. And that you would need to do multiple maps because you're going to have multiple things that you're responsible for.
And it's not just your power, but it's the power of the people that you're connecting with as well.
I was thinking of this more in the context of when they map networks. And to me, the power was you're looking for example, the informal structure of the organization. Who is actually linked to lots of people is a powerful person.
Well, that's really what we're going to get into
That's
next.
why I asked the question. Is it that kind of mapping that you're suggesting?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't, and it's interesting because it's really hit me. I'm starting to do some work for an organization, and I have felt very isolated in this organization. And all of a sudden, it has now hit me, darn it, I need to do power maps. Here I'm feeling like I am isolated, that I am not connecting with people, whatever. And what I now have realized is like, put on my big pants, and I need to create my power map for the different people and the different things that I needed to get done. I need to reach out and start building those connections. So instead of me feeling like I am splintered, I have the ability to use a power map and several power maps to make a difference. And that's what we want people to feel using these skills, is that they have the power to break through, to make the connection, not wait for somebody else to do it, and to really break through barriers. If that helps any.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
Really?
Well, it's always the question's the short part. When you build a power map, are you asking people who they go to for certain things? For example, the example you gave where it's a new organization?
I know exactly that there's actually been studies that have shown, and and maybe you maybe sent that to us, Bob, I don't remember, but there is a whole science to look at the connectiveness of people in an organization. Okay. What we are designed here is your individual connection to the people you need to build relationships to get your work done. We're considering that to be a work-related power map. So it's not that you're necessarily analyzing who in the organization has the most connections. Although I guess if you put them all together, everyone's individual maps, you could find that. Pat, I think you were going to say something?
Yeah, when I've gone into a new organization, I generally connect with somebody who knows the organization well. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, Bob, but this is what I thought it was. If I need to get something done, I would say to them, who's the best person to go to? Who do I go to find out, what's the key that unlocks this magic thing I got to do, right? So you find out who the go-to people are.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
To me, that's power mapping, because other ones will actually give you the assistance in
Yeah, and in a way, you're doing that. So in a way, you might be going to somebody on your power map as just the person that you go to find out who to go to. So yeah, you could easily have somebody like that, maybe right at the core of your power map.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I was thinking, it's like, when something's wrong with the product when it's delivered, who do you go to?
Yeah.
Ask Adam Martin. I'm sure he'll know. That's what keeps him alive in his key accounts.
It's right, because the complaint. Yeah, because he's the customer-facing guy. He gets the complaint. Yeah.
And he's going to tell you who it is who actually understands how manufacturing works. Screw the person with the title.
Yeah.
Good point. All right.
Okay.
All right, we're going to get into the next thing that we're going to have you work on, which, thank you, Pat. We'll get to the slide. So we worked on power maps, which basically is looking at your work that you're doing now. What I want to really get into now is tell you about what are strategic connections. Now, unlike the way that we've been looking at power map and power map connections, strategic connections aren't necessarily essential for getting your work done, at least not the way it is being done now. That could change because of the strategic connections that you want to make. Strategic connections are a network of key people in your organization with whom you have little or really maybe no direct interaction with currently, but with whom you need to connect or should connect with. And you know, most of us are Beacon members, so you can even think about this in terms of Beacon. Who are people within Beacon that you don't necessarily have a lot of interaction with, but from a strategic point of view, it might make sense for you to make that type of connection. So these are personal and they're informal connections, and they can span up, down, and across the organization. And they absolutely, this is where you're really going to cross silos and boundaries, and you absolutely can ignore hierarchy. So that's what we're looking at for strategic connections. And I want to make sure our slide, can we get to where we get into, yeah, there we go. Thank you. So let's go into who these strategic connections are, who might be some of these people. These are people who are proven value creators for the organization, and you absolutely want to find out how they do this, because that it will, by being connected to them, it gives you more power, more influence as well. These may be people who make up the knowledge and expertise base that drives organizational competencies, and you absolutely want to figure out how do you tap into that knowledge community.
And Barbara, that might go right back to Bob's question about how do you know who to go to?
Yeah, good point. So there may be an overlap between a power map and a strategic connection at times. Some of these people may be what we'll call movers and shakers, and they can ensure that the organization achieves its desired results, and through whom important enterprise-wide information is shared. The reason you want to connect with these people is that you want to be a part of knowing what's going on in your organization, not just what's in front of you, but you want to get breadth. Depth is good, but you also want to create breadth. You also want to find out about your counterparts and your peers in other parts of the organization who are striving to achieve similar goals, or who may be facing some of the same issues that you are facing. And you're going to want to connect with them to share, to learn what they're doing. They can learn about what you're doing, find out about best practices, etc. So that is why you certainly want to meet with other peers, not just people who are more senior than you. You want to meet from across. This could be someone from another part of the organization with whom you heard speak at a company function. Again, I can think of Beacon, if you want to think of it as an organization, with all the webinars, virtual programs, and even before with the in-person, someone that you've heard speak and you go, gosh, I would really like to know more about that person. So these may be some or all of the reasons of why you want to connect. So let's get into the benefit that you would receive. You will get a benefit because you will have built a network that also gives you people you know, and who they also know who you are, and that you can go to for help and advice, and you can actually give advice as well. And you will have gotten to know these people well enough that you can connect them to others. Isn't this, I love this particular concept, because it's the idea that you can connect people to others. So not only are you building up your own strategic connections, but you're helping other people do it too. So you become one of those go-to people that, Bob, you were talking about. So strategic networks like this benefit an entire organization. And the reason they do that is that by identifying and resolving clear breakdowns in cooperation and in sharing information, It also helps by identifying opportunities to strengthen viable, and yet we know that there are going to be imperfect elements of the collaborative fabric of any organization. So these are strategic connections, not necessarily in the way that you do your work right now or the way that you thinking about what you need to get done now, thinking bigger, broader, breaking through boundaries. It's a little bit different than power mapping. Any questions with strategic connections?
And not a question, but a comment. This is something that anybody going into a new company, new department, here's your checklist. This is find these people. All of these things, I'm thinking, boy, if I had known that, some of the earlier parts of my career, this would be, lay it out, be so helpful.
You know,
could have gotten stuff done so much better.
I totally agree. What's interesting, we did this webinar for an organization that is in multiple states, and they have multiple services. And it was this is one of the first times on this webinar that people from these some of these different areas actually got together and met for the first time. Companies don't necessarily think about setting this up like you said, Bob. It would be really cool if almost you gave people a quiz saying, find out, check this person out, or find out how you do this, and give it to someone new so that they have to explore and get to know who people are, etc. But in many organizations, it's not done.
Yeah, it sounds like a good add to the onboarding program in an organization, Bob.
Yep, you're so right. All right, so we're going to get you back into breakout rooms, but let me tell you a little bit about what's going to happen here. So this time, there's going to be pair. There's only going to be 2 of you in a room, and you're going to work on your strategic connections. So let me give you some of the information of what you're going to do. Each of you, we'd like you to identify 2 people, either in your organization, if you're in an organization. It can be within Beacon if you want to use Beacon. It can be if you're a consultant. It could be people that are outside of the normal people you work with, but you think that having a connection with them would be helpful. And I'm going to tell you, most of the time, I'm hoping you'll know their names, but even if you don't know their name, think about a type of person that you think you need to get to know. So again, outside of your normal way of work. So identify 2 people. Then jot down the reason of why you want to meet them. What is the purpose? What will be your purpose in making that connection with each one of those 2 people? And then each of you will discuss with one another about the connections you've identified and why you want to meet. And then together, identify which of the silo-busting networking skills you would like to use. What steps will you take? What silo-busting networking skills do you think you need to use specifically to make those connections happen, to build up a relationship? And yes, you're right. You could say all of them, but we want you to pick a few. We're going to give you about 15 minutes to work on this. And when we come back, we'll do a little bit of debrief to see if you found some trends in the conversation that you've had with the other person and how strong you think your strategic connections are right now. Any questions before we go into the breakout?
Would you repeat the things that you want us to discuss one more time?
Sure. Identify 2 people that you would like to build up a strategic connection with, either people or by position. And then state why. Why do you want to make that strategic connection? So identify them, and then the why. And then lastly, identify the steps and the specific silo-busting networking skill you will need to use, and there may be more than one, but what skills would you need to use to make that connection? Okay? Does that make more sense, Charlie?
Yep.
And the first part, identifying those 2 people and the reason that you want to meet them, that's independent. So you're going to do that individually. And then you come together to do the sharing, to discuss the connections that you want to make and why, and then identify the steps that you're going to take and the skills you're going to exercise.
Thanks, Pat. All right. So you're going to have 15 minutes, and we'll give you a 30-second warning. So you'll see that in the upper part of the screen. And Zoe, please break them out.
Yeah, right.
No cheering? Wait a minute.
No we were just talking about, various entertainment things and, the political conventions and how not having an audience really makes it difficult. You don't get that audience feedback.
Well, you do have an echo.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
Don't we? Yep. Well, welcome back, everyone. So hopefully you found that to be really interesting conversations with maybe someone you knew or perhaps even someone you didn't know. I'm just going to ask for a few volunteers to talk about what you found. If you want to either identify a person by name or by type, and what kind of skills you thought that what steps you might take, what silo busting networking skill you might wish to use. So who wants to be that pioneer and go first? If not, I'll be glad to call. All right, Charlie, you, for whatever reason, it kind of got your little green screen. You probably tapped on something and it showed you. So you're it. Charlie?
I plead the Fifth Amendment.
No, wait a minute. I'm talking about Charlie. I'm so sorry, Charlie. I'm talking Charlie Huntington.
That's an even better pick.
Yeah, Charlie Huntington.
Charlie Timmons.
I am so sorry.
I have tried. It has been years that I've tried to out-tap Charlie Timmons. So this is all right. Always happy to be connected to Charlie. So within our, you want to talk about what my partner and I, are you looking for just one opinion, what I was looking for, or what collectively we were? Okay. So my business, we did this, I think we were supposed to make this personal for each of our respective, right? Okay, so I do wealth management by day. I do it specifically for people connected to life science and biotech and pharma. So good connections for me are people who are in transition, at least director level, and they happen to be employed within life science, biotech, pharma, med device, or healthcare IT firms. The person I was connected to was Mona Burke, and Mona challenged me by saying, are you connected to any of the outplacement organizations, Wright, CCI, Lee Hecht? And she is able to help facilitate some connections to people she knows within one of those organizations who are working their way through within pharma. It's perfect. And we can get them in a group through a local not-for-profit known as Life Sciences PA. I chair their in transition group there, along with a colleague named Tom Hess. And so that was perfect. The skills that would help are cultural and political savvy and connection creation.
Okay, so that would, and those are the ones that would help you be able to make those connections to the people that Mona could introduce you to. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate Charlie Huntington being my first pioneer on that.
Sure.
And I'm trying to think, AV. So I'm trying to think about people that haven't heard from yet. How about you? Tell us about who were some of the strategic connections that you could think of, and what would be next steps or the silo busting networking skills.
Sure, be happy to. I'm in transition, so I talked about the case that we're dealing with now, that we just went over, and I said if that were me, the person that I would most want to connect with is human resources. And I would choose human resources from the perspective of finding a partner that could get the message throughout the whole organization using something like a town hall meeting, so that the ideas were fluent throughout the whole organization and everybody was being pulled along at the same pace. I also thought that I would go directly to asthma very early in the project to find out what the relationship issues were. And I always look to find the most difficult people that I can find, because if we can get into agreement and we can sell that person, I've got somebody that makes a lot of noise. I'd rather them make a lot of noise on the side of getting the project across the finish line. And I thought the skills that would be utilized would be cultural and political savvy and open communication.
Okay.
I don't think a project such as that can ever get done unless everybody's on the same page.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And going back into the case study to think about how you would do a strategic connection. All right.
Irvin had his hand up.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Irvin. I was looking over the other side here. So Irvin, go next.
Happy to, Barbara. I was working with Avi. Interesting, we would be talking right after each other. One of the things that we discussed was, when you look at your question of identifying the two people who will help us grow, I took that a bit broader, and I hired a marketing company out of Bend, Oregon, of all places, to help me with how can I reach out, not to just one narrow group. Like Charlie Huntington was saying, he was in pharma and a variety of allied industries. We're fiduciaries and an advocate for clients through the lens of money and finance. And we help them with their wealth as well as helping them with life-solving problems. So I decided that we're going to help as many as we can for free by creating a new website with articles. I wrote a book. I'm in the process of writing book number 2, and putting these together in a series of questions, and hopefully will help many people. And if it ends up sifting through people that are more and more interested by their continued interest in our different articles, then so much the better. If they're not interested, then at least they got some very good help.
Okay. Okay.
So hopefully that would be a good way. It's not necessarily two people, but helping us connect with many that are in search of the kind of services that we want to offer.
So I understand your logic, but I'm gonna push back, because I'm seeing maybe a little bit of a trend, and that when we're looking at strategic connections, it really is, I want you to be thinking one-to-one. So who are some very specific people that you want to build a connection with? So I want you, the group is fine, but I also want you to be thinking one-to-one, because that is how you're going to build a lot of influence and make some more connection, okay? So I like what you did, and I want you to also then think within that, who's that one or two people to build a one-to-one connection with. I'm going to go with someone inside an organization. So I am, Jen O'Hara, lucky you. You are in Republic Bank. So as you looked at strategic connections across Republic Bank, what did you think of?
So I thought of someone within our consumer lending group, because I don't really have a great connection with anyone in there. And there are some people who work on our applications, and I've had some situations with some consumer lending applications very recently where it really would have helped if I had an inside person and some connection with someone. So I kind of thought of someone that it would be great to build a connection with. So this way I could have someone who would help me and help the customer, and someone who I could turn to when I really needed it.
Okay.
So for me, it really is about that connection creation and building a trusted relationship from there.
Cool. Cool.
Good. Great example.
Absolutely. Bob Jarvis, how about you? You'll be our last person if you want to provide some thought about what you thought about for strategic connections for you.
Bob, the other Bob, and I went down a different path, so don't really have an answer. Pick someone else who might have something
All right.
meaningful.
All right.
How about Wendy Lee?
Yep, you're right. Wendy would be perfect.
Okay, so I guess I should turn my camera on. Sorry, I turned it off for a minute. So actually, it's interesting. Mark and I were partnered, and I will say that I did all the talking and Mark did not. Sorry, that's me rumbling in the background there. And so, interesting story, because this is exactly why I joined Beacon, so to speak, right? So my background is in engineering, and I've worked in the corporate world, but I'm looking to make a change, and I know that I want to change direction and do something completely different as my next career. So I actually joined Beacon to start building a network outside of the corporate world that I live in. I'm interested in getting into nonprofits or working potentially in the nonprofit world. And what attracted me to Beacon was the nonprofit subgroup that existed at the time. That group disbanded shortly after I joined, actually. It just restarted, and kind of as a way for me to then kind of just jump in the pool then, I agreed to co-chair the nonprofit subgroup with Janine, because I guess, what better way to kind of immerse yourself in trying to learn about something than just doing it. So I'm starting to then make the connections that I was looking to and get the information that I'm searching for in terms of just figuring out what I want to do next in the nonprofit world by doing that. So, certainly looking to find those connections and build those connections. Mark made some suggestions in terms of like Rory and Lou, who now I work with that subcommittee, so I'm already talking to them, and Janine, but he was also able to give me the name of another gentleman that I should reach out to that has done something similar, went from the corporate world to the nonprofit world. And then I can learn from those experiences, because what I'm really looking to do is learn and refine what I want to do, have that network in place and have those connections in place, so that when I'm ready to actually make that transition, that groundwork has already kind of been done and I know what it is that I want to do and move towards.
Cool. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank all of you for sharing and for participating. I'm looking at time. We have 3 more minutes. Pat, is there anything that you want to add before we throw this back to Zoe?
The only thing I would add is on what Wendy said, that I like the idea that she wasn't looking for a particular person, but more a particular type of person. And she knows what she needs to get when she makes that connection. So that's a great way to network, as you did with Mark, so that you can start meeting those people who are the kind of connections, the strategic connections you want to make.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.